Welcome back to Open Line. We're talking about cyberbullying. We have with us Dr. Anna Settle, licensed psychologist. And this is a huge problem for kids. We've even had adults call in and say they've experienced this. Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to William. Hello, William.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Well, I think, bullying can come in many ways. When I came here, 2001, I have injured, I got bullied by a student. So I walked straight to them and told them, where I'm from, you don't bully somebody. And next time you say something or I come around and you say something, it's going to end right there. And they stopped. And, we became friends. But when it comes to young kids, because I was 21 when I came here, so we were people in my age that was different. But
you were how old when you came here? You were 21, is that what you said?
Yes, when I came here I was 21. That was 2001. I'm 35 now.
Okay.
But here now, it seems like, in our they say charity is start at home. If you tell your kids, don't bully, the kid in the class, don't say something bad. If they have no teeth or they darker skin or they have a leg missing or a head or no head, don't bully them. That kid's going to go out and treat them right.
Right.
It seems here like sometimes the parents say the kids are young. They cannot understand either. That's not the way to go, because if they go out and they keep bullying kids, they grow up as a bully. And Donald Trump is a good example.
All right, well, let's talk about a lot of what you said. I appreciate the call, William. Thank you. He's saying he was bullied when he came here. He was 21 years old. He confronted the bully. He said, we don't do that in the country I come from. He basically confronted the bully, and he said it stopped. What do you recommend for people that are being bullied? I just feel like, I don't know if that works. I don't know. What does work? Is there something that works?
Absolutely, the person has to be confronted. So I think when we're talking about children and adolescents who are more vulnerable, and maybe the bullying could continue if they are outright and direct about addressing it, certainly any adult or caregiver or coach or administrator has to confront the person who's doing it. I think this guy is absolutely right.
So he confronted. You're saying parents, coaches, whomever, they should confront, certainly.
Right.
Should the kid who's being bullied, should he go and confront, or she go and confront the bullier?
I don't think the onus has to be on the victim. I think if the person is feeling compelled to do that and wants to do that and feel safe in doing that, absolutely. I would like to see that happen. Oftentimes they don't feel safe in doing that. But he was saying he was 21 years old. He confronted the person, was pretty direct about it, and it stopped. I like that tactic. Does it work, do you think? I think it can. Yeah, oftentimes I think people don't necessarily think about what they're saying, especially on social media. They don't understand the impact, and when somebody explains that to them, then the gravity of what they said and how the person felt in response to that can affect whether or not they do it again in the future. And then he's saying, tell kids don't bully. He's saying the other thing, parents need to tell their kids don't bully. That's obvious. I guess we don't do enough of that, perhaps. How much does that work, telling your kids not to bully? I think it helps. We are opening the dialogue about it. And in fact, there was a recent research study that showed that I think it was 68 to 70% of children and adolescents who were bullied within the study actually told a parent or administrator. So we are talking about it. We are encouraging children to tell when it's happening, and people are telling on their peers, which is exactly what they should be doing. So I think we're in a spot where, because we are opening the dialogue and because it's getting a lot of attention, we're doing a good job and moving in the right direction. It seems like schools talk about this more than ever. Yes. But they need to. Because again, it's one thing if it's at school on the playground. When you move it to the social media realm, right, that's just so devastating. It's so scary to me to think a kid is at home at night and they read something terrible, and then what do? That's so scary. Yep. And so you think schools are doing enough? They're certainly talking about it more. There's no doubt. Right. Absolutely. And that's positive. All right, let's go to Lucy. Lucy, how are you doing?
I am fine, thank you.
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm listening to this show, and I really do appreciate y'all doing this show on this topic. In response to your call, Carl, 35 years ago, I worked for a prestigious organization who advertised every week on PBS and sponsored a show. And I was really surprised that somebody was envious, found some way to be envious of me, and it had to do with my weight. I've always been extremely thin. So for somebody to say that I had AIDS and spread the rumor around when I went to work there, I think their intention was they're married, they're not satisfied, so therefore they don't want me to find one of the many men that were there. I could care less. But that culminated into she's a dyke, and then it piled on. And when outside work and other people piled on to it. My point to Carl and William and all the kids is this goes all the way back. They talk about this in the Bible. Your burnt offerings, you're the scapegoat. You know, we found out a lot here in the past 10 years about the brain and how the frontal lobe is not fully developed until you're 25. And if people don't think that you should not rein in your bullying children at an early age, this will translate into their professional life. Businesses will lose time and money because they continue, the bulliers, they continue this on the job. I would like your guest there to speak about what projection is and how a lot of these bullies have poor impulse control and how they project themselves on their victims, if you could, please. And I'll hang up and take your comments off the air.
Lucy, thank you for your call, as always. What about what she's saying there? Projection.
I think that happens frequently. You know, you talk about children and adolescents who have low self-esteem. Certainly it feels good to make somebody else the victim as opposed to being vulnerable yourself. So if somebody doesn't feel very great about the way they look, oftentimes they will deflect and talk about how someone else looks. So they're doing, as she was talking about, projecting their own negative self-image onto someone else. And the goal there is to deflect from themselves so that they don't have to experience that hurt, but the consequence is that somebody else is having to then experience it.
And yeah, so the profile of a bully would be, you said, somebody who was perhaps bullied themselves, and that would probably mean at home. That's what I would take that to mean. Is that right?
Possibly, or among peers at school.
Okay, so a bully is somebody who is also bullied, either at home or among peers. And then this notion of an insecurity. They're projecting an insecurity of their own onto someone else.
Correct.
And yeah, that's interesting. So what do you do about that? If, I guess, number one, you're the parent, you have a bullied kid, or again, your kid's being bullied, you see the situation, you know, walk us through what we do about those things.
Right. So first of all, I would say that not all bullies have been bullied. Certainly there are mental illnesses that children can have that will result in them doing and saying things that are hurtful to other people, in spite of the fact that they haven't been bullied at home, or that mom and dad have done a good job in opening that dialogue. So I just want to make that caveat.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So if you have a child who has been bullied and is in turn bullying someone else, or simply a child that is bullying, you just have to address it head on. There can't be this kids will be kids sort of mentality, or let them work it out. Like I said earlier, the stakes are just too high. And so if it's happening, the seriousness of it has to be communicated. I would say bring in other sources of support, other trusted adults that are in the child's life, and talk to them about, you know, what's going on with you that leads you to exhibit this kind of behavior towards other people, and what do you need from me? How can I support you? And in addition to that, the victim or victims of the bully have to be supported. So if we discover that our child or that someone else's child is bullying someone else, then we have to first of all address the bullying itself with the bully, and then also make sure that the victim is supported, even though he or she might not be speaking up about it.
And you address this a little bit right off the top. Be very hands-on. When it comes to social media, the whole notion of helicopter parenting, which I think is interesting, that's a negative thing. And I guess you could address that separately. Helicopter parenting, is that in general bad? but in this case, it's absolutely needed. Helicopter parenting, where you just are all in your child's business, you're trying to protect them from anything negative going on. If they have a little spat on the playground, parent helicopters in and helps them out and works it out for them. Doesn't let the kid work it out themselves. So now there's this whole thing: don't helicopter in, stay away, let kids. It made me think: let kids be kids, all that stuff. With this stuff, we can't let it work out that way.
Right. Yeah, and I think helicopter parenting is sort of a fad term, and people do see it as it being something negative. I see it more as you're jumping in when there is an opportunity for conflict resolution to happen in a positive way. Or if your child is an athlete, maybe they can figure something out on their own as opposed to you telling them exactly how they should handle a situation. That's different from a child is experiencing victimization in some sort of way that is devastating.
Right. All right, before we go to break, let's take Joe. Hello, Joe?
Yep.
Go right ahead.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say that, we all have faults, and all of us kind of understand our faults. Is it harder for us to, is it wrong to make fun of our own faults and not make fun of somebody else's faults? Or where does bullying begin?
Okay, what do you think of that?
That's a good question about self-deprecating humor, because we do that a lot, right? I would also say that, you have to be as kind to yourself as you expect other people to be to you. And so if you're talking negatively about yourself, or you have a negative self-image, you're sort of opening the door for other people to chime in and do the same thing. So absolutely, I think we have to be as kind with ourselves as we are with other people.
That's interesting. That was an interesting question, Joe. All right, we'll take a break. If you want to call, there's a number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. We'll be back right after this.